Hello, in this video, we are going to be talking about epidemiology. Epidemiology is the study of how diseases spread. And so we're going to be talking about how epidemiologists study microbes and how they specifically spread. Now, studying how a disease spreads is really important for preventing more spread of disease. So here in this diagram or kind of map, we're talking about the SARS-1 virus that was spreading in kind of Asia. And as you can see, it started out in China, and then they kind of tracked where it went. So some of it went to the United States, Ireland, Singapore, etc. So this is what epidemiologists do: is that they, especially when it comes to a new disease, they want to figure out how these diseases spread. So whenever you hear news about the CDC, recalling some kind of lettuce for E. coli or some kind of chicken because of salmonella, those are the works of the epidemiologists who are basically tracking all of these diseases and making sure that it's not spreading too much. So, a couple vocab words to get out of the way. Epidemiologists will describe diseases based on their prevalence and their incidence. So, the prevalence is how many people are being infected at a specific period of time. How many people are currently infected at a certain time period. Whereas the incidence is how many new infections have happened in a specific time period. So, for example, with HIV, because it is a chronic infection, chronic meaning that it is long term, even though, as we can see in this graph, the incidence is relatively low, right? So every year there's only a few new cases of HIV because HIV is chronic. And, once you have HIV, you basically have it forever. The number of people who currently have HIV will always continue to go up because that's our prevalence, right? How many people are infected currently versus how many new people are getting infected. So HIV will always keep going up because this is a type of disease that will never go away once you're infected. Now, if we were talking about a disease where you get sick and then you're usually better after a week, then the prevalence does not go up in the same way. And that is because it can start going down once people start feeling better. Okay, when we talk about diseases, we also talk about the modes of transmission. How do these diseases spread? And that is really important because if we, as epidemiologists, want to stop the spread, the first way is to figure out how it is spreading. Obviously, the most common one is direct contact. If you are in direct contact with another person who is sick, and they have the microbe on their hands or whatever, then, it can be transmitted that way. Indirect contact or indirect transfer would be through fomites. Those are inanimate objects, for example, a doorknob, syringes, etc. There are other ways to, transmit microbes. Some microbes are transmitted primarily through food. So, again, back to the CDC outbreaks of, Salmonella, E. coli in the lettuce and food. That's a common one. And then droplets. So specifically, these are microbes that are traveling through the respiratory system usually. And so you sneeze or cough, and those air droplets are going to travel into the air, and then another person breathes that in, and that's how they acquire that microbe. And then there are some microbes that travel through vectors. So a vector is a living organism that is going to be actually transmitting the microbe from one to another. And when I say living organism, this is usually a bug, though it can also be, a rodent or something like that. But typically it is an animal that is transmitting the microbe. So a mechanical vector is an organism that is transferring the microbe, but isn't actually being infected with it. So here in this example, if a fly is, sitting on some kind of fecal matter somewhere, and some bacteria gets on the feet of the fly, and then that fly lands on your food, now it has transferred that bacteria from the poop to your food. Now, did the fly get infected with the bacteria? Not necessarily, it was just on the foot. So the fly is fine, but it was the vector that transferred the bacteria from the poop to your food. And so we call that a mechanical vector. And that is different from a biological vector where the actual vector is infected during this process. So the classic one is malaria and mosquitoes. Mosquitoes, as we know, transfer malaria from one person to another, but when they transfer it, they themselves get infected with the malaria parasite. So that is different from a mechanical vector. All right. And so epidemiology, again, is super important for tracking diseases, especially emergent diseases. These are diseases that are new to the human population or they went away and for whatever reason they're coming back. So, for example, Ebola is a thing that epidemiologists are a virus that epidemiologists are tracking because we had Ebola for a while in the 1970s, and then we didn't have any Ebola, but now it's coming back, and so they're trying to figure out what to do and why is it spreading. And so epidemiology will always be an important field because there's always going to be a new disease that we have to track, whether it's an old one that's coming back or a completely new disease. So I hope this video was helpful, and I will see you in the next video.